Why can't I make my warm-up whatever the team needs most at that moment? All we have to do at the end of a good warm-up is have tissue be warm, and why can't I do that laying? Constraints-based approach or differential learning, that opened up a whole new world for me to be able to do for warm-ups.
What you're doing is so important and so potentially revolutionary for sport.
Rhett Larson.
Rhett Lawson.
Rhett Larson.
Rhett is the vice president of Just Play. He's a former Velocity and Exos performance coach, working with the Chinese teams for the 2012 and 2016 Olympics. Really cool stories there.
Been a strength coach for 20-something years, and everyone thinks all I do is dance. Because that is absolutely not the case. A team can be down by 5 points, but if they just won that last point, they're smiling and high-fiving, and that's not just a mindset thing. Like, that's a physiological difference in those athletes than there is in the losing athlete. Failing together, being silly together, doing a dance together. People ask me all the time, if I was not working for women and I was working for men's teams, would I occasionally make them dance? Hell yeah, I would. I would love that. And I've done it before, and the teams love it. You're happiest not when you're on the sandy beach, but when you're learning something new.
It's a radical approach. Gamification, play, novelty, it really is. But what surprised you most about this approach?
Hey everyone, Juliet here. I am so pumped to finally share something that Kelly and I have been working on behind the scenes for months. The Starrett system.
If you're like us, you're juggling a demanding career, an active lifestyle, maybe even a family, and probably a million other priorities. You're the type who gives it your all, but if we're being honest, your body might not be feeling as unstoppable as it used to.
Maybe you're waking up stiff and sore, feeling drained before the day even starts, or you've got nagging aches and old injuries that keep you from the activities you love. You've tried all the programs, all the fads, and maybe you've even seen some results, but nothing sticks and it feels like you're spinning your wheels.
Problem isn't your motivation, it's your strategy. And that's where the Starrett system comes in. We have a program designed specifically for high performers like you. This isn't about quick fixes or unsustainable routines. It's about building strength, mobility, and energy into your life in a way that works for you.
We've created a system that simplifies your approach to health and performance. During the week, you'll follow progressive workouts that prioritize strength, recovery, mobility, sleep, and sustainable nutrition. On the weekends, it's all about playing outside and doing what you love.
This is about creating a body that doesn't just survive your busy life, but thrives in it. Head over to starrettsystem.com to learn more and join us. We can't wait to help you unlock the strength and energy you deserve.
Rhett, we are so pumped to have you here, and this is probably only the third or fourth in-person interview we've done at the Ready State office, so we are extra psyched that you are here in person.
Wow, that surprises me. I mean, I don't know how much what the economics of Zoom is like, but I figured this would just be cheaper.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a volume business. People understand. Really, like the margins are small, so it's definitely you make it up on volume.
right. I figured that makes sense.
So I'm just going to come in swinging and ask you, what is the no zombies concept?
No, I'm going to start with saying,
You can't cut me off. That's
yes,
my
I'm
main
cutting you
question.
off. I need to set this up or set up a little bit in the intro, but you are the most important coach in strength and conditioning today. What you're doing is so important and so potentially revolutionary for sport. There's a lot of things we got to keep an eye on, but this is everyone what's up. And no zombies summarizes it all. So what is no zombies?
Let's hear it.
No zombies is a philosophy that I have come to kind of espouse over the last couple of years, and it was born out of the hope that I could just be doing more with warm-up. And I was fortunate enough to come from a bunch of different training philosophies that had really impressive warm-ups of their own. But even with a library of hundreds of warm-up ideas, when you find yourself with athletes over the span of 5-10 years, if you're working in a box like I was, or if you're with a team and you get to see them twice a day, that the beats of your warm-up will get familiar. Even if the exercises are there's a little bit of variety there, they still know that it starts with the foam rolling, and then, okay, we're going to strap on the mini bands next. We're going to do these activation exercises, and then we're going to get into an active dynamic warm-up, and here comes Rhett with the walking knee hugs. And then eventually we might do some plyometrics or some low-level rapid response neurological drills, and we'll call it a warm-up, and then get into practice. And I just kind of got a little bit resented. Maybe my ego took a shot that my athletes could kind of sleepwalk through that after a while. And especially in sport, where I'm always clamoring for more time to do important stuff with my athletes. If it's the beginning of the season, I'm a little annoyed that I only get 3 days in the weight room with them, and I would love to make their shoulders more bulletproof. I'm annoyed if my head coach is like, we're not fast enough, but won't give me a speed session to be able to make them faster. And eventually it just occurred to me, like, why can't I make my warm-up the time that I'm working on whatever the team needs most at that moment? So that if it is the beginning of the season and I need to make sure we don't have knees that hurt, then I need to be consulting with everybody I can find on how to prevent patellar tendinopathies, and then making warm-up look like that kind of a rehab session or a bulletproofing session. And if we're slow, it needs to look like Stu McMillan designed it, and it's just going through a bunch of speed stuff until we are not the slow team anymore. If we're stressed out, it should look fun, and what it should be is adaptable. And by kind of opening my eyes to all that it could be, I realized that just the sheer variety in what we're doing is keeping athletes stimulated. And I'm getting athletes that are like, okay, what's going on today? And that was kind of the revolution in my head. And it was only after that that I realized, oh, well, I can also make it fun. Like if there's no glaring needs for the team, and all we have to do at the end of a good warm-up is have tissue be warm, then why can't I do that playing? Fortunately for me, at this exact same time, there comes this nice body of research coming in showing the advantages of play, the advantages of being creative, of kind of constraints-based approach or differential learning, being able to take the sport you're playing and add noise to it. Well, that's kind of the fun that opened up a whole new world for me to be able to do for warm-ups. And no zombies is that you try to never have the same warm-up day after day, week after week, that there are tenets of the warm-up. I'm always going to make them make volleyball specific shapes if I'm working with a volleyball team. Like, we're always going to do things that get ankles and like leg musculature and T-spines mobile. All those things are going to happen. But within those parameters that are very broad, boy, the world is my oyster. I can think of dances that do that. I can think of games that I steal from Korean PE teachers that do that. And so that's, I guess, a long-winded answer to where it came from and what it is.
Full stop. Amen.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of follow-up questions we'll have here, but I have to imagine that having a diverse, playful, fun, dynamic warm-up environment also sets a different kind of stage for the actual competition, just psychologically for the kids. I mean, I don't know that there's any study out there that's going to say, okay, if you do these kind of warm-ups, you're going to have this kind of outcome. But I have to think it sets a totally different stage versus doing this sort of, okay, the same warm-up I've done since the 1900s. And, that's how I'm going to approach this game mentally.
And so, Juliet, you touch on something that's a really important distinction, is that there are pre-practice warm-ups and then there's pre-competition warm-ups. Like, you can also, I ask myself often that my pre-competition warm-ups, like, how much play do I put in there? And I put in, I know, more than any other coach at the elite level, but there it's a little bit different, because you wouldn't want in before practice, that's where our safe space to fail and look foolish, and I'm going to put constraints on a frisbee toss until no one can catch it. All right. And that's just where we are pushing the outer edges of our athleticism with something like that. Now, within a game, right before a match where we're looking at Team Serbia, Team USA on the other side of the net, and things are important, we don't want to feel incompetent necessarily, but we do want to be smiling. And so I have to find that sweet spot between between having it be so loose and so difficult that I've taken the progression up so far that, they feel like they're stumbling all over themselves. I would never want that. But, we have a Frisbee warm-up, competition warm-up. It's currently the girls' absolutely favorite warm-up, where they are tossing Frisbees sideline to sideline, which doesn't result in too many errors, but does result in fun, like having to reach out and get it. And we, can put little constraints on that. And then they do little skips and crawls and kind of standard warm-up stuff. But just adding that Frisbee toss before you do your skip across the sideline to sideline, just doing a Frisbee toss before you bear crawl back is that little 5% of fun that has the other team on the other side of the net staring over at us while they are in their circle doing their little calisthenics and jogging four times around.
It's so dumb and such a waste of time.
And our team is smiling and laughing. We end our warm up with a kind of relay race competition that does get crazy, where I set up kind of cones in the middle where we have to do figure eights or something. And then when we get to the sideline, you almost have to jump and throw the Frisbee to the person that's waiting to go. And we have 3 teams of 5 at that point. And it gets heated. We have to have one of our assistant coaches has to watch the line for cheaters pre-competition. Like get way too into it.
I want to tell a story because I really love pre-competition, post-competition, and I want to get into what the goals of a warm-up are.
Yeah.
But one time I was like, double Dutch is going to be, this is it. And I brought double Dutch out because it's actually one of our tests of athleticism. Like if I'm going to choose a fantasy kickball team, I subject you to double Dutch and quickly can tell who's got rhythm, who's got timing, who can work. Girls are spinning, right?
Speaking my language.
And it was such a colossal failure where people couldn't jump in. They couldn't do a single. I started simplifying it. I was like, oh, this is getting worse. And
Yeah,
it's
he's like,
getting
I'm going to
worse.
eliminate a rope. We're just going to do single.
Within 9 minutes, I was like, okay, let's pretend like we didn't just abjectly fail on the worst thing ever. And then I had to like dig us out of some like psychology hole where women are like, I'm a failure. I can't double Dutch.
Were you doing that before a game or was that in
Yes.
practice? Okay. Yeah.
And
So
before
see,
a game,
there's the practice and
I
game
have
difference.
time, and I'm like, the idea was
that's-
like another twist to the pretzel. I'm always looking like we are always jumping rope. Jumping rope is one of our foundational. We're immediately moving, we're bouncing, right? I'm really protecting our women's shoulders and getting them super hot. And jump roping, I was like, well, this is just a different form of jumping, right? And I love working in teams of 3. Total just fell on my face.
I did the same thing this year. As my wife can tell you, when I was in China, I had a short list of things I wanted to buy in China because they are so much cheaper. And I got 16 double Dutch ropes, like long, and they have rubber in the middle. So they really go, they're very easy to turn. They also cost 12 cents each.
Right.
And so I brought that over and added it to my war chest of warm-up toys, brought it out mid-season, same as you. I have a team of jumpers, right? I have a team of very coordinated elite athletes.
No, you don't.
I swear, Kelly, they jump.
You thought that they were the best athletes in the world. You may have some gold medals. Come on.
Thank God that I had cameras rolling so I could catch the disaster that it was. And so I had to call it at 15 minutes of trying. Like we really stuck to it. Went nowhere. I brought it back to, no, here's what I wanted to say. I had been watching videos on how to teach people double Dutch.
Yes, of course.
And I then, after I watched them fail for 6 minutes, was like, hold the phone, record scratch, everybody come here, watch me. I, like you, Kelly, I'm very good at jump rope. It's like one of my superpowers.
I walked around the room jumping in. Hey, just do it like this. And I just jumped in 100
but- and
times.
also,
couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Hit me
the-
in the head 3 times.
My entire childhood, like I spent like 8 years of elementary school. That's all I did at recess
Your
was
Gen
jump
X is
rope.
showing.
It was like so Gen X. Like I just would go out to recess and we jump roped.
So-
That's all we did.
Underlying this, and for the coaches who are listening, one of the reasons I'm really interested as we kind of unpack this pathway to play, to exploration, to attrainment, waking up nervous system, doing CNS stuff, getting the heads turned, all those things. As a coach, we pay attention to a lot of world-class performers. And I think it was Jack White who had said, hey, if you're going to be, it was in that documentary with playing guitar. And he was like, if you're going to be on stage, you need to be a little bit uncomfortable. And he's like, if the microphone's 1 step away from you, you need to put it 2 steps away from you next night, just to change a little bit. And a lot of times I think that coaches sleepwalk. They become zombies. It's not that your athletes are zombies, but you're not innovating. You're not iterating. You're not actually growing as a coach. And this is a really wonderful way for you to explore your thinking.
Yeah, and experiment.
In live time. You have potentially some of the world's best athletes in front of you. They serve your understanding.
Yeah, and I get inertia. Like I get how, if you're a coach and maybe your thing is data science or readiness and like whatever, and you only have so much bandwidth as a strength and conditioning coach or a head coach or whatever it is, and you think, warm up is the time that I kind of check out. And
Yeah.
well, I get that, but also on this, at the same time, I get a little frustrated because a lot of those coaches wish they had more time with their team, and so what I've come to realize is that you need to just see this as extra time to solve the biggest problem your team is having, and for a lot of coaches, the problem is just that, hey, I don't have this many ideas. It seems just overwhelming to have to.
Only there was a resource.
If only there was a resource. So I have tried to make that easier by kind of putting my library down, because it's not like I have people give me credit for having a lot of creativity, and I don't. I've just been chronicling all the great ideas. I got to go to China and see the Chinese women's judo team warm up for a month, and that looked like American Gladiators meets a Japanese game show. It was amazing, like just jaw-dropping stuff, but not as jaw-dropping as watching the French coach of the artistic swimming team, who was former Cirque du Soleil, who was doing stuff that would make Stu McGill throw up in his mouth, like just horrible, spinal, but incredible feats of strength. Like you could run out of the memory on your phone taking videos of the artistic swimming.
And you bring up something that's really important. I know Jay's moving me along, but one of the things that this has created in our little coaching group, because we have a coach text group, which is just for us to put ideas, and it's sort of an unofficial channel where we can say, I like this, look at this. But it's gotten everyone else thinking about, look at this fun game, look at this fun drill. Lance Morrison, who's one of my, a coach I work with at Cal, he's the goalie coach. He and I probably have 3,000 warm-up ideas. When we see something cool on the internet, we just send it to each other and like, let's try that.
Right. And I think I would be in a similar chains like that. I have a bunch of coaches that we all share ideas, but Instagram is incredible. I mean, if you look at my Instagram saved, it's just tennis ball ideas, long stick ideas, hula hoop ideas, beach ball ideas. And I'm just waiting. And then, eventually those go into a list in Excel, and I am just waiting to go to a facility that has a bunch of pool noodles sitting in the corner, so that I can go into my pool noodle file and try all of the crazy stuff that I've been waiting for. And I realize a lot of people just don't have this mindset towards it, because I shifted a long time ago as just spending just as much time thinking about warm-ups as I do any part of my strength and conditioning, because I honestly feel that it is a competitive differentiator between my team and the other top teams in women's volleyball, that I've weaponized a time that everyone else is throwing away. And I think that is and sometimes for fun and play, and a lot of time for fun and play, but also for what I think really moving the needle.
I love it.
I think one of the things you said earlier is at the end of your warm-ups, and it sounded like you were talking about the end of your warm-ups in actual competition, your athletes are smiling and having fun. And I think a lot of coaches listening to this might think, oh, well, that's not the posturing that we would want to be, sending to the other team. And my guess is that you disagree, that actually that fun and smiling and play is actually a weapon, and a competitive advantage.
The women don't have enough pressure already.
Yeah, so I don't know. I would love to hear your take on that, because I think maybe sort of like a lot of coaches would see that and be like, ooh, that's maybe not. And I think you're saying that actually is a weapon.
What I have learned in elite sport, and that I would never make a blanket statement about anything. I mean, sure, anybody that's watched the Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, you'd be like, that guy probably doesn't want to smile and giggle before competition. I don't know, but I will tell you this, that on the 3 teams that I have worked with in women's volleyball, I've noticed one thing. After the after every single point, 6 girls are laughing and smiling and 6 girls are kind of posturing to be like, oh my God, I'm so disappointed. I'm so sorry, everybody. Or, hey, it's okay. And their shoulders are slumped. And there is a difference in those teams. A team can be down by 5 points, but if they just won that last point, they're smiling and high-fiving. And that's not just a mindset thing. Like there's a physiological difference in those athletes than there is in the losing athletes. Like, you know this if you've ever, like if you're a tennis player and you've double faulted on your last 2 serves and you go back to serve another time, the next time you're up, everybody in the crowd knows you just double faulted twice. You know you've just double faulted twice. Your shoulders are slumped forward, tightened. Your heart rate's probably racing higher. You are a different human than if you'd just gotten 2 aces. You just gotten 2 aces. You are thinking, I'm about to get 3 aces. This place is going to explode. My shoulders are backing down. I'm smiling. And so I am trying to get that physiological change in my athletes before the first whistle blows. Like, I'm trying, like, if we are smiling and everybody on the other side of the net is distracted by how much fun we're having, that is a good place for us to be in women's volleyball. They love strutting off the court while the fans are all staring at us. The other team is staring at us. The announcer is saying something about us. You can't tell me that's not an advantage, at least in my sport. I know it is.
We have 24 individuals who have different expectations, needs. We've just been in a long bus ride. We have to unite those 24 people. And when I say entrainment, I mean, I want them to be listening, tied in. Something I picked up from some friends who were doing improv is that they would play 20 minutes of throwing a balloon around just so that they had to start to listen, watch, set the other person up. There's no talking, but the body language, entrainment, eye contact is as important. For us, we are looking at our warm-up as a transformation of 24 individuals into a team where it finishes the moment where we do our sort of gnarly cheer, where we've transitioned from breath practice to entrainment, where suddenly we're playing and riffing and playing jazz with each other. And that, I have to say, it's got to be as part of it. One of the most important books that I read last year or 2 years ago was Belonging by Owen Eastwood, really looking at culture and feeling like you belong to a group as a competitive advantage. And what you're telling me is that's it.
Yeah, if you aren't taking advantage of the very easy gamification of kind of group dynamics, right? And that's why in a given week of my warm-up, some will have the girls as individuals. Sometimes they're paired up. Sometimes they're in 3s. Sometimes they're in 4s. Like, we want to put them in different group dynamics. Maybe if I was concerned that we weren't communicating well, maybe I would have them play a game where they have to have a conversation and one person has to begin their sentence with the last letter of the last word that the person before them just said. And that is an absolute fine thing, a great thing to do to make an otherwise boring isometric lunge that my physio is begging me to do because he thinks it's a great exercise. It's a great way to turn that exercise into something a zombie can't sleepwalk through, is if you're trying to do this thing. And maybe it's even helping them be better listeners. Maybe it's even helping them not cut each other off and let everybody's voice be heard. I'm saying that there's not enough being done to dabble in some of these things that you think might actually move the needle with your team. I don't think there's enough justice for dabbling out there, that if you are seeing things that especially you can do, as you said, Kelly, in different group dynamics, you are bringing together this team. And guess what also brings people together as a team? Failing together, being silly together, doing a dance together. People ask me all the time, if I was not working for women and I was working for men's teams, would I occasionally make them dance? Hell yeah, I would. I would love that. And I've done it before, and the teams love it. You guys don't have any experience with dancing, so you wouldn't understand this.
Thank you for teeing us right up on this. So before we talk about dancing, or this is part of dancing, I'd love it if you could tell the story, because I know that there was a viral video of you doing dancing with a team in your warm-up, and I think it went insane on the internet. So I'd love it if you could just tell that story because it's such a cool story. Like, what was the setup? Where were you? What team was it? What was the reaction? And then obviously sort of lean into why you think dancing is definitely a go in warm-ups for all different kinds of sports.
Well, this was back in 2019 when I was with the Netherlands, and the Dutch team is a really, really, you guys have been around the Dutch culture. Like this is, the stereotypes are great, very logical, but also down for anything. And we were at the World Championships in Italy, which is the hotbed of volleyball, women's volleyball, and sellout crowds at every match we're going to. This is an Olympic qualifying tournament, so this was
A little bit serious.
a
is what you're
little bit
saying?
serious, a little bit serious, and we'd been doing these warm-ups for a while where it's really, I don't know about a standard warm-up, but I wouldn't say it's anything that would knock your socks off until the last minute and a half of a 13-minute warm-up where I'm doing traditional rapid response drills. If you can imagine, I'm standing in the middle of the court. There's a line of 4 or 5 girls lined up with girls all behind them, and those 4 girls are up, and if I say, quick feet, and they start doing quick feet. And then if I point a direction, they might do a quick hip swivel. And if I touch the ground, they have to touch the ground, that kind of thing. But there's free game in there for me to do whatever I want. They have to follow the leader. And so occasionally I'll just break into a running man or floss or, chubby checker or, the Charleston or whatever. It always, and you just feel the crowd start getting into it. And we just, like I said, it maybe lasts a minute and a half, but over the course of 7-10 days and 8 matches, like our crowds are showing up early to watch this, and TV crews are coming in, and this one TV crew put together, a 1-minute sizzle reel that makes it look like that's kind of all we do. And they put it to music. And I got up on the last day. This guy said, I don't know if you know this, but we published this on our site. It's our most popular video of all time. We're looking at almost 5 million views in this first week. And we don't know what you're doing, but you need to be doing this all the time. And the crowds were crazy. Like our assistant coaches went from kind of taking videos of the girls to just taking videos of the crowds. But the nice thing was, this completely opened the door for me to have the larger conversation about, A, why do we take warm-ups so seriously? And B, what can warm-ups be? And, I defy you to tell me that my dancing doesn't fit in with the normal neurological rapid response drills that everyone's been doing. But you can't tell me that the agility ladder or mini hurdle foot coordination drills that have been so well loved over decades are any different or any better than what
The
you
running
see with
man?
Yeah, than the running man, than my Cabbage Patch.
And this is a perfect time to talk about one of our mutual respected coaches, Caleb Marshall, the fitness marshal.
Yes.
And
Tip of the
Shout
cap.
out
Shout out
Fitness Marshall.
Caleb and his team are amazing. And everyone listening to this, you're gonna Google Fitness Marshall, and you will not have to go far. Nope. YouTube channel's worth it. I integrate Fitness Marshall into some of our warm-ups because we're slow, we're tired, we're having to do it again.
Right, you just got out of the bus and you've been sitting.
And it's really simple for me to throw this on and everyone's in. And we have a generation of kids that actually value dance, and they love it, and they're not afraid because we're filming TikTok dances all the time. And so this is just something I'm comfortable with, yet we're touching shapes and spinal positions and rhythmic, and we're training, and everyone feels a little self-conscious till they don't. And it's a miracle pill.
I mean, how many things do you do in warm-up that you catch your athletes doing in the lunch line, hours later? It's something that makes them feel like they're growing. And so when you asked the question earlier about why coaches aren't doing this, I think maybe coaches have forgotten how fun it is to learn something new. I mean, when I take on something new like Fitness Marshall, I can't make them do it without me doing it. So I'll hedge my bets. I'm going to watch that Fitness Marshall dance
Oh, yeah, I'm
10
dancing.
times in my
yeah.
hotel room before I debut it.
I've chosen Megan Trainor for a reason.
Oh, yeah. And so,
That's a good one.
oh, I know. We can compare notes on what our favorite ones are because we did a lot of Megan Trainor. But, and even if there's some stodgy strength coaches out there that are like, or dads thinking, I don't want to have to do that, then that's not it. I mean, you could learn rolling ropes, like learn club swings, learn anything. Growth is happiness. I think Tony Robbins preaches that you're happiest not when you're on the sandy beach, but when you're learning something new. I really think that's true. I feel it's what I get excited about these days is I keep thinking, what new thing am I going to bring to my team? Well, that's also, I love feeling like a cool dancer. I mean, I'm 52 years old. Like my wife and I will do Fitness Marshall in the basement because we actually feel cool
it's
learning,
fun.
not
Yeah.
looking stupid if something comes on. And if my players are listening right now, they're thinking of all the moves that I'll break out during warm-ups that when there's a lot of people watching, and I'll only break out a Fitness Marshall move if I know that my team has it
they're
locked
ready,
and
yeah.
they got it.
So we've talked a lot about, and I think you hinted at this, but I'd love for you to just sort of lay out in your mind, like, what elements does a good warm up have? And, I'm wondering if you can just speak generally, because we probably have coaches across all different sports listening to this. And of course, every sport is going to want to do some of their own sport specific warm ups. Like our kids play water polo. They're obviously at some point going to want to get in the pool and throw the ball and shoot a few shots. They're going to want to do a little bit of water polo stuff. But like, just sort of universally, what if a coach is like, hey, I want to try to implement this? Like what boxes should they check to know that they've done a good general warm-up?
Okay, so I think the first thing to know is that I think that there's really one box, and that is getting tissue warm. Full stop. Done.
Yeah, get hot.
Right?
Yep.
Get hot, right? And then if you could layer on top of that, make sure you're moving through your sport-specific shapes, that you're hitting those shapes and you're having some fun with the end ranges of motion. Great. But I think my general philosophy is that I don't want anyone to feel limited as to what a warm-up can be. That my world opened up when I started thinking, okay, anything that's getting you moving qualifies for the thermogenic part of it. Now, if that all seems overwhelming to turn, if you're given 10, 15 minutes to warm up, you're not just turning it into a 15-minute duck, duck, goose game. That I think there's a misconception that it always has to be fun and play, right? But it can be anything that is moving your team forward at that time. I think the play is largely
I want to
discounted.
interrupt because that can be reading the room.
Oh, yeah.
This is what my team needs in this moment. So being flexible. And two, you already said, what does this environment have that's novel that I can utilize? I have a hill. Suddenly we're frog jumping up the hill, right? It's cold and we have a fence. Suddenly the fence is a big part of that game.
If your athletes are coming in every day and not just walking over to where the foam rollers are that you've set out, which was my life for decades, if they're instead saying like, Rhett, what's going on today? Why is there a ferret tied up in the corner of the gym? What's going on with that? I'm doing my job right. Like I want them wondering and everyone knows when I walk into a gym for the first time, I am just looking for stuff. Do they have basketball hoops? Are they up or have they been broken down on the ground? Okay, what could I do with that? Because I need them to be stimulated. And that's the bar I'm
Not just
clearing.
physically, but mentally.
Mentally.
Yes.
Mentally stimulated. I want to challenge them with kind of movement puzzles. You guys know Ido Portal. So when I worked over in the Netherlands, and I saw him, I went to his workshop for the first time in China, saw him again when I was over in Europe. And that guy is all about just challenging you with a movement puzzle. I love that idea. I love that idea of, swinging a stick sword at an athlete and them having to figure out a way to get out of its way. And you keep running around doing that. And then, challenging somebody to take a stick that's, if they're lying prone on the ground and the stick is balancing on their feet, you've got to try to find a way to get all the way back up to supine with it still on your feet. Like challenging athletes to fail and do stuff like that is the sweet spot that I'm going for. So it can be anything, but I'm looking to have athletes grow and feel a sense of accomplishment, which is a big lever of gamification I like to pull. And if I can do that in warm up, that's awesome.
So one of the things that was so cool about Kelly and I being part of like the early emergent CrossFit universe.
Oh, that's where I know you from.
Is that it? Yeah, we were emergent
I was
early.
wondering if you guys were familiar with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're like, oh, you were part of that. Anyway, in the early days of CrossFit, the whole philosophy was you were going to show up and have no idea what the workout was. And that was actually part of the ethos. And we really liked that. And, the culture changed and the customer expectations changed. And we did, like everybody else, switch to the point where we would pre-publish the workout so people would know. But there was something special about that, where you're like, I'm going to show up today and I have to be ready. I don't know whether I'm going to be doing a 5x5 heavy back squat or running a mile or, doing gymnastics or box jumps. I mean, really the sky was the limit. And there was something psychologically about that I thought was really important as an athlete in terms of growth. And also, we didn't really get to cherry pick either. Like we had to just show up and, if it was the thing we sucked at, we were still going to do that thing. So I don't know if I even have a question, but this reminds me of that coming in and not knowing is like awakening a little bit to the mind.
My coaching friends and I were obsessed with CrossFit back in 2008 and 9 and 10. We went to the first CrossFit games in Carson, the first 2 CrossFit
you watched
games.
Juliet
Get out of here.
compete?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
That was the beginning and the end of my CrossFit career, but yes.
Is it
first
too late
year
for
in Carson.
congratulations?
Thank you.
First
Thank
muscle
you.
up, top 10.
That's amazing.
I know.
Well, so yeah, anyway, we were...
California champion, team champion here.
What?
But yeah.
So-
Early days.
But I remember those early days when we were waiting at midnight for it to get posted online, and we would look at what the WOD was, and we would be exchanging messages, being like, "Oh my God, what is weighted shoveling? What are we going to be doing tonight? What? And I can't do 100 pull-ups. How am I? Like this is? It was such a big deal. And talk about gamification levers. Unpredictability, right? Variety, all there. It doesn't have to be fun to be fun.
Yeah,
But
right.
the novelty piece is, once I like to introduce it, and this is my own blind spot, but I like to introduce a drill and have girls or women start to become competent at, and then I just mess it up. And I mess it up again, and I mess it up again. And, when we first started doing resisted runs with the bands, and then it turns into, hey, how can we jump with the bands? And then can we chase a ball as we're doing resisted runs? And then, oh, by the way, we're going to do this now on an exhale hold as you run and catch a ball. And the physiology, everyone, is gnarly. And I can tell that we're nearing the end. I usually get 30 to 40 minutes of taking dead people and resurrecting this team into a sharp knife that I feel like is a competitive advantage. I feel like everyone gets into the competition, and the first quarter particularly is not the same for everyone. Like people are spinning up, but since the second half, everyone's warmed up and in their groove, and we really start to see some of the differentiation change. But so it's a real advantage for me to, again, just keep layering on as gnarly as I can make it, as fun and novel and different as I can make it, so that when we get in the water and no one can compete with us.
This episode of the Ready State podcast is brought to you by Element.
Look, one of the things that we see as people are trying to eat less ultra-processed foods is that they're eating foods with ingredients, right?
Because we're an ingredient
We're
household.
an ingredient household. Listen
Yeah.
to our
If
children.
you have teenagers, you know what we're talking about.
One of the things we see regularly is that these same people are exercising hard and they're not adding salt back. And literally your brain is hardwired to need salt. Like if you understood that your whole body is this crazy electromagnetic machine, right? Don't laugh, it's true. And salt drives the whole thing. Sodium is queen.
That's all well and good from a performance standpoint, but I think we all know that we need to drink more water or drink enough water every day. And two
being all
things we
practical.
know to be true is that we want to actually absorb the water we're drinking, which salt helps us do that. And then number two, putting element into your water just makes drinking water more fun,
It's
which
true.
means you drink more water.
Look, I don't know if you know this, but I don't believe in drinking water.
It is true. I mean, left to your own devices, you'll just drink 6 cups of coffee.
And Element. So
Yeah.
what's nice is that for me, it has solved this problem of we actually cook with real ingredients and I have to add salt back. I'm a kind of a big kid and I spend time in the sauna. So Element has been a game changer for me and continues to be in terms of just feeling good and having tissues that can take the abuse I know I'm going to throw at
And
them.
it tastes really good.
It tastes really good. Right now, if you order through our link, you can get a free sample pack with all of Element's flavors. And if you want to party in your mouth, what do we say?
Try sparkling.
Drink lmnt.com/TRS because what? We literally drink it every day.
True fact. This episode of the Ready State podcast is brought to you by Momentous. And one of the reasons we are such a fan of Momentous is that all of their products are third-party NSF tested.
Which is, let me just be blunt, expensive and a pain in the butt. And that's why
Which is why
people
most
don't do it.
companies don't do it.
Yeah.
And because supplements aren't regulated, they're not required to do that.
So we're going to talk about in this NSF world, which again, it's so clear, either your supplements are NSF or they're not. And some of the research just put up by one of our friends just highlights how gnarly and Wild West it is if it's not NSF
Let's just
certified.
read a few of these things. In 34 sports supplements, actual quantity ranged from 0.02% to 334% of the labeled quantity. In 31 melatonin supplements, melatonin content varied from 83% to 478% of the labeled amount. And in multivitamins, the measured amount for 17 vitamins and minerals exceeded the label amount. What else you got?
So extras. Check this out. One of the reasons that we're such NSF fans is that we have a bunch of friends who are getting tested, right, regularly. In 57 sports supplements, 7 contained at least one FDA prohibited ingredient. In prenatal vitamins, 39% of samples exceeded established standards for lead toxicity, right? Check this out. In FDA approved, non-FDA approved CBD products, 21% of samples contain THC.
Hold the phone. I got one more. In 57 sports supplements, 40% did not contain a detectable amount of the compounds on the label, meaning 40% of those supplements did not have
4 out of 10.
what they said that they had inside of them. So it's the Wild West out there.
Look, if you're trying to get vitamin D in your family, make sure your supplement has vitamin D in it. If you're trying to, get a good quality omega, make sure it's NF certified. This needs to be a gold standard. We need to talk about this more because you're paying for things that aren't there or you're paying for contamination.
Yeah. And if obviously the first order of business is eating whole foods, that's where we want to get most of our nutrition, but sometimes supplements can fill those
It's
gaps.
supplemental nutrition. I think there's almost a difference in supplementation.
But I think if you are going to fill those gaps or think you need to do it with supplementation, which is great, we support that, you've got to make sure the products that you're buying are what they say they are.
To learn more, go to livemomentous.com/TRS and you can use code TRS for 20% off your first purchase of NSF certified goodness.
I think that too many people think, especially during warm up and just in general, you just start with an easy regressed version of something and then you slowly progress athletes. That's just the way you do it. And I'm a big fan of showing athletes the hardest version of something and then watching my elite athletes try to self-organize and figure it out.
That's right.
Like, I think that they get a lot out of that. And if it's not thermogenic enough, then I add a constraint to it where they have to make it thermogenic, but then you go figure out that puzzle again. Like you can't catch a Frisbee behind your back with your offhand. Well, then you're just going to have to keep working on it. This is good for you to be struggling right now. And the nice thing is you have a lot of research with the ecological approach to training, like the Franz Bosch guys over in the Netherlands when I got to work over there that I mentioned. These guys are really smart at showing how important it is to be pushing the outer edges of that athleticism, to be failing a lot, to be having to do something that seems almost outside your sport and outside of the norms of your sport. But what you're doing is you're building a bigger movement library. And that's what we want. We want people, we want our athletes. There's only so much you'll evolve if all you're doing is playing your sport. And that if I am perturbing the hell out of your sport, if I'm constraining the hell out of your sport, if I'm forcing you to dance when that's not your sport, then what I hopefully am doing, along with making things stimulating and interesting and putting a huge smile on your face, is I'm making you a better athlete. I'm building those synapses. I am myelinating those pathways.
You're saying something I think is really important, and we talked about just downstairs for a second, was that specialization is a thing, and it is really beyond the power of anyone to fight that. So how do we, in the weight room, view warm-ups? Is that the place where we can start to say, hey, we're going to give you a whole nother sport, a whole nother movement language, a whole nother learning and loading opportunity? Is that how we solve this problem?
I talk about teeing me up. Yeah. So as we were talking about that, absolutely. I mean, how many coaches have sat in this chair and barking at the moon about how everybody's early specializing now, and that no, you don't have multi-sport athletes very often, and that's the best thing for people. But those same coaches might also be a little bit stuck in their ways with warm-up. Like, why aren't you making your warm-up that time that you are forcing your swimmer to play table tennis? Like, why aren't you forcing your athletes to gain skill sets in other sports and do things with their offhand and build that bigger library? Well, that's what warm-up can be. And when I don't like to answer the question about like what should the parts of warm-up be, anything that you think is building a better athlete, responsive to what your team needs or that athlete needs at the time, yes, but also as a default, something that is outside of their sport that's going to be trying to make them better.
I work with a lot of water athletes, and we jump rope on one foot because their feet are weak, and it's just one of those vitamins that I'm like, they know they're going to see
Right,
that
they're
at
not
some
getting
point,
the loading.
right? So we get this single leg coordination, loading, foot strength, and it's terrible.
Well, we've talked about this before in this specialization conversation, but I think if anything, it's done a disservice to parents, because what it's made parents feel, parents already feel maxed. Parents of youth sport athletes feel maxed. It's expensive. It is time consuming. And it's not just that for the athlete, it's for the whole family. I mean, once you're signing your kid into club sport, you're like, this is what I'm going to be doing on my weekend. And this is how I'm going to be spending my vacation time and my money. So it's a big commitment for everyone. And then to tell a parent, well, you can't specialize and you've got to sign your kid up for a whole other sport. That is too much. And so we've been trying to encourage people to say, hey, you can get that anti-specialization in the weight room, in a good strength and conditioning program, doing these amazing diverse warm-ups. You can go hiking or skiing. There's so many other ways to do it. And we just are trying to sort of dispel this idea that you have to sign your kid up for multiple formal sports, that actually may not be what they need at all.
Yeah. I have a relatively hot take, because I don't 100% agree that kids should be multi-sport athletes, only because I got to work with China diving and China gymnastics for a while. And if you want to create a happy gymnast or a happy diver, multi-sport athlete, if you want one that wins a gold medal when they're 16, you might want to have them specialized, because they're not going to beat the Chinese? Question mark.
Yeah, and we think there is we totally agree. There's a time and a place and a moment for specialization for sure.
But it's not necessarily the specialization. It's the lack of development, the lack of play, the lack of skill acquisition that happens with it. I think if we could have kids who are bulletproof, could pick up a new skill. I mean, we have been defining who's the best athlete in the world. The kid who can pick up the new skill the fastest.
Right.
That's our definition of who's the best athlete.
Yeah, you should be able to one click and get into a new you should be able to absolutely one click and download this new sport pretty quickly, and that's an athlete. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm stealing that definition. Nicely.
You're like I'm saying, this is being recorded, so you got it.
Circle C.
What I imagine you run into some skepticism from other coaches, and other than showing that it can work with good performance, what do you like? How do you sell this idea to skeptical coaches?
Aren't you worried you're going to injure athletes?
Yeah. No. So the important, I'm about to start a season with my fourth head coach in 5 years for Team Germany. Right. So I'm really used to the honeymoon phase of having to take a coach. And I've had a coach tell me, Rhett, I've seen what you do on the internet. I like what I do in warm-ups. I don't think we're going to use yours. Now, fortunately, the way that I approach that, if that's kind of the scenario we're talking about, is that like they don't see all the play and the fun stuff. What I'm doing is I'm paying attention in practice, and I'm thinking, okay, coach is just harping on the team about that they're not low enough on defense. Well, coach, I think I'm going to, on warm-up tomorrow, if it's all right with you, it's going to look a lot like that drill you did with the defense. I'm just going to throw weight vests on them, or I'm going to have them holding heavy medicine balls, and we're going to try to just kind of reinforce that, if that's cool. And then when I hear he's mad about us not crossing over aggressively on blocks, I'm like, you're going to notice tomorrow. I'm going to do that crossover drill. Let me just make sure I get the verbiage right. If you wouldn't mind actually just keeping an eye on it so I don't coach it incorrectly with the footwork, but I'm just going to resist it with bungee cords just to try to help you out, right? I'm going to complete mode of let's make the head coach want to buy me a beer after practice.
Sportbier first.
Sportbier.
Ja, Erdinger. Sportbier.
Erdinger man.
Yeah.
Mensch.
Ich habe vor 8 Jahren in Garmisch gewonnen. So, but the second piece here is...
That might be like the first time you've really spoke like a full sentence of German on this podcast.
You're welcome.
He's impressive.
It was a great joy for me.
What I love there is the mental manipulation of buy-in, right? Of explaining your why and setting them up to understand what you're doing. But the second piece there is actually seeing the need so that you can make the coach's job easier. And I want to be very clear. I might have things that I really want to get done. I'm a physio, I'm a strength coach, right? I want to restore these positions. But ultimately, my job is to set these athletes up to be coached and to be able to occupy the space in the way that the head coach needs. And that's the end. Everything else is bullshit.
Right. I don't keep my job unless that guy is really, really happy with me. And I'm not making an Italian head coach who's never had a S&C like me. I'm not making him necessarily happy if on day one he's watching us dance to Fitness Marshall, right? But like that gets layered in later after I've already gotten him, the physio that he brought, where I'm asking the physio, hey, tell me about your favorite 3 shoulder exercises, because I would love to put them in to my warm-ups for the next couple of weeks. And so, it's in this way that I almost see myself as like a glue guy, like an agent of alignment, where I can use warm-up as that time to kind of bring in a lot of the staff and then also the athletes. And by the way, they're happy that they're doing resisted crossovers that the head coach wants, instead of the same crawls and jumping jacks that they've done forever and ever.
Right.
And
Since
ever.
they were in third
They're
grade.
They're not unhappy about it. That's stimulating because it's at least different all the time, because we worked on getting their butts low yesterday, and now we're working on this. And so that's kind of where I want to be, is that's where I start with a skeptical coach. I've had skeptical athletes as well.
It takes a while to buy in.
Yeah. Some more than others, but yeah, once they see that, that any misconceptions they might have about the play part of it, that goes out the window, because they see that even on play days, when we are playing, when it looks like when we're throwing Frisbee, we take a break from throwing Frisbee and we are doing handstand hold isos against the wall, and girls' arms are shaking, and then we're doing abs until they're sore. And then we're like, and it's hard. And he sees, and he's like, if you ask him after a Frisbee warm up or a hacky sack warm up day, what he thinks of Rhett's warm-ups, he'd probably say, they're hard. I need him to know that the girls sometimes get sore from the warm-ups, and that I need them. So that's, that I'll take. Right. They don't think of Rhett as being playful. They think of Rhett as being tough.
And I want to just reiterate that you're also, this is not a conversation about warm-ups. You are a performance coach.
Yeah.
You are also running and planning the strength and conditioning.
Correct.
So we have always believed that we have this sport, and it's rare. We know that Dan Pfaff, Stuart Millen can watch someone jump, run, throw from any angle and understand what the limitation is, right? That's our goal, is to be able to understand why a woman is doing this or an athlete is moving this way, and we can't solve a technical problem. But we believe that it's actually very difficult to change that movement pattern and that skill necessarily, because it's a complex environment, complex interactions. It's just hard. And an athlete can't be like, let me do this with my shoulder. I'm trying to catch the ball and fight this person, right? It's a 2-step jump at the net, right? So one of the things that we can do is run in parallel this strength conditioning diagnostic platform. So strength conditioning for us becomes the place where we can see deficits. It's the only safe place where athletes can work on pain. Coaches, the position coach, sports coach isn't there watching. We can work on developing, filling in the blind spots. And so you're just continuing that in as skill movement development into this sort of opportunity that we're talking about. But I want to point out that if you go into you had a great post that I just revisited about why you don't do max deadlifts in season with your athletes. And people are like, you don't deadlift? You're like, well, we do a lot of deadlift-like things. And I see you on the K-box, and I see you doing, jumps, and I see you hinging and swinging. But my point is that there's a continuation of understanding movement competency and movement fluency here.
Yeah, they dovetailing in the way that I approach this. I mean, a lot of the exercises that I choose to put into warm-ups, so this idea of microdosing is, I love thinking of taking all of the exercises that kind of ruin the flow of my weight room routine or are things that I think need to be addressed more often than 3 times a week to actually move the needle on it, right? So there's a lot of things in the shoulder realm, the knee health realm that benefit from being done all the time and more often than just 3 days a week. And if it doesn't need a lot of load and I can put it in, if it's Spanish squats, sissy squats, if it's ISO holds, like I hate all those things in the weight room. I hate like when I'm in the weight room, I want to put weights on the bar. I want it to be like things that I couldn't do anywhere else. And I don't want my weight room time to last more than an hour. That's another part of like my agreement with my team is that we're going to get after it, but I'm never going to keep you more than an hour. But that informs what I'm going to put into my warm-ups. Like I can take all the abs out of my weight room because I'm putting them into warm-up. I can address my shoulder stuff in warm-up. I can, they all have to work hand in hand. It really has made it so much, it's easier for me to program the weight room when I'm also programming in concert the warm-ups, all the strength that I put into warm-up.
I have a pretty good reputation. People sort of know my bona fides, right?
We're just talking about your calf size. Is that what we're...
God.
Is this
calf implants?
Just
Do you even
another
know him?
way of doing
I
this?
I mean,
Is this-
talk about a tee up right there, Rhett.
Thank you. This is why
My
you
God.
understand we're on the same team.
I'm trying to go home
At
with
least
this
it's
Yeti.
either that or hip extension. I mean, if you talk about his calves or hip extension, like you're speaking his love language.
All right.
One of the things that we see is that it takes a minute for athlete buy-in, especially I'll get new kids in the system. My kids who've been around me, and I'm just saying kids euphemistically, but the athletes who've been around me for a while trust the process. They know that they'll come out being easier to do their job in a sport. And it's nice to be able to take this 30,000 foot view, but it takes a minute for new athletes who've never been exposed. We have 2 Dutch athletes on the team, and they have a very different, shout out Faye and Rose, but they have a very different like historical training culture. Mm-hmm. How do you start to get dose that? Because kids are looking around like, we have a new Hungarian kid on the team and an Israeli, and they were like, this is crazy. This is crazy. What is happening here? It's hard. They're freaked out. They're sweating. They've never warmed up like this before. How do you get buy-in with the athletes that you're working with?
I mean, fortunately, at this stage of my career, like people know what's coming.
Yeah, right.
But your question is still a good one. In that I'm a talker, so I'm going to explain that I'm going to ask for a lot more effort out of you in warm up. I don't tee it up like, oh, we're going to get zany and you're about to fail a bunch and it's going to be, no, it starts with, just much like the head coach, it starts with, this is about to be more intense than you're used to. And you're like, if you better hope the head coach says we don't need more fitness as a team, because then I'm going to have to turn this into something where you're uncomfortable at the end, right? Because I am always going to be shifting it, but they have to know I'm shifting it for this team because I've been told this is what this team needs the most. And so it's never coming out of left field because that's what I can't have. And I only am putting Frisbees in when I've already told everybody how Frisbees are uniquely wonderful because they have an unpredictable flight pattern. And I love that you're all terrible at it. And that you guys having to react to a Frisbee is not dissimilar to the way you have to react to a volleyball, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how it starts. It starts with this is very relatable to volley. It starts with a month full of exercises. Unfortunately, the beginning of the season is a time when we do need to be building more strength. And so I do get to come in more seriously. Like, the girls don't see dancing for a while.
No, you can't. You can't
right.
necessarily.
Yeah,
lead with that,
you
right?
can't
No.
open with Fitness Marshall. No,
Don't open with Fitness Marshall. Like,
No.
I have earned Fitness Marshall by the time I deploy Fitness Marshall, and that makes Fitness Marshall even more of an impactful to that team. So again, I start with tough, and then I layer on fun. But tough can be
still be fun,
It can
right,
still
because
be
it's
fun because
different.
it's not the same.
right. It's stimulating and different. I just would like to pay homage to the Frisbee. Kelly and I are obsessed with throwing the Frisbee, and we're not really judgmental people, with one sole exception, that we are judgmental of people who can't throw a Frisbee. Wouldn't you say?
100%.
100%. I played a little bit of ultimate Frisbee in college, and we always have a Frisbee
Like
in
I'm
our
like,
car.
you seem like a good person, but
yeah,
you're
but then
you're
if
not.
they-
It's not
if
validated.
they can't
yet.
throw a Frisbee, we're kind of like,
Unconfirmed.
yeah, unconfirmed person. So I mean, people can still earn our affection if they can't throw a Frisbee, but I'm just saying it's a thing for us.
I actually always travel with a Frisbee. And one of the things that I want for our teams is I want the other teams to think, I don't have that.
Yeah.
What are they going on? We were
Right.
at
Feel a little FOMO.
yeah, we're at our sort of league championships, and head coaches of teams that have already been knocked out are sitting down in the grass watching what we're doing. And like they're like, they've never seen anything like it. And I'm like, that's right. You're that far behind. Yeah. And when those other athletes walk past our team and we're playing hacky sack warm up, we're dancing and someone's on aux and doing a good, like, that is part of our warm up strategy before we become formal. We want to set up a work world where people are transitioning towards serious. I don't have to push that, because these are best athletes on the planet competing against other best athletes on the planet. But when another team walks by and we've got the aux going and we're playing hacky sack and people are throwing the Frisbee and they're messing around and the kids need to do the rolling, like, people are like, what is happening here? Because we're not doing that.
I wrestle with the role of my ego in all of this. Like, I would hate to think, and I think about this a lot, like, I'd hate to think that how much am I doing this because it's remarkable, because it makes me look like I'm some sort of a, like, it makes me
Right, you're
different.
like-
And I kind of, like, I don't know, I kind of enjoy being a little bit different, and doing things differently. And like, I'm pretty sure that's never been at the detriment of my team. Actually, I think that my ego forces me to be really creative. Like, I'm constantly, almost obsessively searching for new ideas on what I can do with my team that is volleyball related, that, what PE game could I switch to make it a little bit more athletic or make it more thermogenic or whatever it is, or get them into volleyball shapes with it. But I think that it serves. I think that it serves me more than it hurts, and because it does spur those creative juices, and I know that my team loves being different. I know that my team loves that we do things a little bit differently. That when everybody else is trudging to go do yoga straight off the airplane, that we're about to go dance Fitness Marshall for 20 minutes, and they love that swagger. I get a lot of my athletes, and this is the best compliment they can give me is, Rhett, this is my club team strength coach. I've asked him if he would call you to see if you could give him some thoughts on how we can keep doing the dance activation or the dance warm-ups. And, I have an online group of just strength coaches for elite volleyball. And sometimes I'll get embarrassed if a video gets posted and it seems almost too showy, and I'll get these guys saying, this is awesome. This is what I would love to be doing. And this helps me get one step closer to changing my head coach's mind, because you're doing it at this level.
Especially when we I constantly have to remind teams I'm working with this. Why do we do this? And they're like, injury prevention. I'm like, eh. And they're like, to get stronger. I'm like, eh. And I go on and on. I'm like, anyone know why we're doing this? It's so that we can play better at our sport. Full stop. Everything else is in service of that. Especially in season, it is sports, not sports preparation training. It is sports specific training, which means, and that doesn't mean we reclaim positions and work on capacities, but the whole thing is in service of the game. And it's really easy then for me as a coach to say, does this get us closer to playing better? And am I removing potential barriers?
You bring up something that just spurred a thought in my head. And I remember thinking this when I was working with younger athletes. Like I said, I started my career with 10 years just working with young athletes. And we had and elite, but we would painstakingly teach them how to do perfect hockey stops in order to do a 5-10-5 drill really well, or run an L drill, or we would teach them how to do really wonderful crossovers through our 17-step wall crossover preparation drills. And I remember thinking that, like, what if a competitor to our performance company opened up across the street and they just played tag? Like just 20,000 tag variations. And I remember thinking, I think they would beat us at every sport. I'm pretty sure they would develop better athletes because, you know, the play stuff can be knocked down because it doesn't look as serious. Like if I opened a place and all we did is play tag and play different kind of games, there's no way we'd stay in business because
Right, they'd be like, this
parents
guy's not
behind the
serious.
fishbowl
Right.
would drag their kids out of there and go to the guy down the street with the agility ladders and the mini hurdles and the wall drills and all of that. And there's a place, especially for young athletes, to really teach some mechanics. But this is the problem, is that you start divorcing perception from action. You've started when it's just drills and it's a very confined environment. The body stops recognizing it as the actual sport. And when you're no longer having to react to the movement of hips, or you're staring down at a ladder to try to get more agile, when so much of agility is in perception and trying to read a juke, right? Like you're missing the boat, and you might lose to the performance to the kids down the street that are just playing tag and learning that, you know, intrinsically. So why am I not doing more games like tag with my elite athletes? Because when I would do those with my NFL Combine guys, that was a different level of intensity than when I'm just even having them do a timed 5-10-5 drill.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh my
Right?
God, I bet.
That's a different level of intensity. So why am I not harnessing that effort? Why am I not pulling that gamification lever? Because it's actually also making them good at perception and reactivity. Like Franz Bosch said, stop spending time in the misguided pursuit of mastery in perfect conditions. Like, why bother?
That does not
and
exist.
So much of warm-ups that you see happening with the skips and the A skips and the karaoke are kind of that. And so I'm throwing it out in favor of more of the tag stuff.
You know, we just had Steve Magnus on our podcast, and he
heard it.
Was quoting a statistic, which we've heard in other places, also from Positive Coaching Alliance and other sources, that 70% of youth athletes are dropping out of sport by age 13. And there are many reasons for that. But one of them has got to be it stops being fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get it. We've got kids who are serious athletes. Sometimes the actual competition can't be as fun because it is serious. You are trying to advance. It's
Coaches have their
competitive.
jobs on the line.
Coaches have their jobs on the line. Winning does matter at some level. But it seems to me that incorporating some of this kind of stuff in warm-ups and in practice is just one of the many ways we could continue to make sports fun for kids and keep more kids in sports. And you know, obviously also, you know, checks so many other boxes in terms of agility and, you know, all the things we've been talking about, but just the fun piece.
Yeah, you get to hedge your bets there. Like, this is why I mentioned Chinese diving and gymnastics. I worked for both of those teams largely because they saw me counterbalancing the strict rigidness of practice. They know that they have athletes that have by necessity need to peak when they're 16 or 17 because you have to be small to be able to rotate quickly. But me doing more playful warm-ups is exactly, and them, they understand that they need 13-year-olds to smile. That I do think it's an undervalued part of what we do, compliance. Like, if you've never had to work in the private sector where you have to actually provide a workout for kids, for example, where the Venn diagram of it being hard. You can't send a kid back to their parents and he hasn't broken a sweat when he's been with you for 90 minutes. They have to have been looking at from outside the fishbowl, seen their kid smiling. They need to have seen that their kid also is disciplined. They cannot see the kid running all over you, right? So coach needs to know how to take down Doug, who thinks he's the alpha of the situation. And he's not, because he's 11.
No problem.
And
Sorry,
Doug.
Dougie.
I can beat up Doug.
One of the things that I love is I find the challenge of, hey, I suddenly have, we just finished a game, we're back in the pool in an hour or 40, and we've got to eat, we've got to reactivate, just get moving again. One of the things I like to do is ask my seniors, what do you feel like you want to do? What you need? And I reach into them and lean on them to say, what's the piece? And it's really surprising. Hey, I really feel like I need 7 minutes or 8 minutes of breath work, right? Or, hey, can we hit the ropes? And oftentimes it's nice that I have kids who are now starting to get fluent and playful, but they're like, I need more of this. I've had kids tell me I need to be more explosive. I feel like I play better when I've lifted weights. Can we do more weightlifting like things? So they're starting to be able to identify how what they need can fit into a warm-up. Do you ask some of your top players what they want to do?
No, I hate them. Couldn't care less. Yes.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not interested in their opinion.
I keep mentioning gamification because I'm a big student of it and I love it. And autonomy is an enormous lever that you get to pull.
I'm going to let my kids, I believe in led warm-ups because otherwise we just come back to whatever, right? But I still want agency in that work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the Australians are famous for a captain's run on the day before games where they'll let the team captain control
New
warm-ups.
Zealand too?
Yeah, right. The All Blacks, sorry. And I feel also, checking in is something that I think a lot of great strength coaches do. But certainly team captain and I have to have a great relationship where I am very often, especially during competition, I feel like, especially during competition, because you never know what a game took out of athletes. I have a really hard time estimating, like, all right, we just won handily in 3, or you can win in 5 and lose in 3, and those seem to have the same like fatiguing effect. Like a quick loss and a long win seem to be equally bad.
You're saying the brain is weird?
The brain's involved in all this.
So I've gotten that wrong sometimes, and that's a check-in. That's we had weight scheduled for tomorrow. You tell me if that's either a dance activation session or is that a stretch session? Is that weights? But I change that totally up. And for warm-up also, I have a good feel for my team. But yeah, there are times when I know what my athletes' 4 favorite warm-ups are. The ones that I don't set up beforehand because I want the experience of surprising them on it, all right, where they all cheer like crazy. I deploy those just when I really need them when our team is down. And there's times that I have to check in with with my team leader and team captain and say, hey, by the way, I know you're not feeling it. Thanks for telling me that. We're going to do boundary bash ball tomorrow. Don't tell the other girls. Let's make it a surprise.
What has been the greatest surprise in this approach? Because this is kind of a radical, it's a radical approach. The gamification, play, novelty, it really is. And I wanted to say, if I've been watching you for a long time, I can see and I may have been smart enough to understand what you're trying to accomplish when I see these things. I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. Like, that's super sneaky. But what surprised you most about this approach?
Head coach buy-in and just buy-in across the board. Somehow I thought this was something that that is successful maybe through the force of my personality. Maybe I need to be the one driving this. Nah, I think it's been replicated with other people now that I've started. Now I got on Instagram and I'm seeing people come out of the woodwork telling me, oh my gosh, this is just such a great idea, which has really felt great. But that how other coaches are finding that they can do this and they're saying, this has changed things for me. This changed things for my athletes. I would never have expected it to be so sticky. And like I said, I've had 6 head coaches in my last 8 years. How all of them really loved it, loved this approach. and have, I'm very proud to say, I think all of them would happily work with me again to have
Yeah,
more
and
of it.
I think the reason, if I might say, that you're getting buy-in is that you are solving a problem for these head coaches, right? It's something that they don't have time or want to think about, but they do want, when the whistle blows or the game begins, they want their athletes to be ready to roll. And once I think a head coach sees that you solve that problem for them and then some, because you're bringing in so many other skills and so many other benefits, that I'm assuming they're sold.
Can you talk for just a second? We've talked a lot about coaching women. I have found, and I'm just going to make a gross generalization here, so just bear with me, everyone. If I have a bunch of boys,
Lisa just got nervous.
if I have a bunch of boys and I'm like, I can bench 315 for 10, I'm in. Like they're like, come with us. Like you're on our tribe.
Yeah.
And working with women, it takes a lot longer to have trust. And it's also easy to break that trust. Can you, those are just generalizations. And I actually much prefer working with women. I really love that. I love how long it takes to have trust and buy-in and safety. I really love the quick wins with the men because they're like, oh, I see the truth of it. We're in, we're going, right? But what has surprised you about your approach maybe in coaching men versus coaching women? Because everyone likes to play and everyone likes to compete. And we can be a lot more rowdy with boys differently.
Yeah.
And I'll just tee this up, that the first time I ever became aware of this was in a documentary about like gymnastics, and Bella Caroli, his women loved a really formal warm-up and his men played indoor soccer. Mm-hmm. And I think I learned about that in the 90s and I was like, oh? That's kind of crazy, So I was like, but that was when can you talk about some nuances of approach of working with a men's team versus a women's team?
Sure. First of all, I prefer women too, if only for the music selection in the weight room. Oh, German weight room?
Dude.
It is intolerable to be in a German men's weight room, like Kraftwerk you're listening to, like crazy
Schmutzige
death metal.
tanzen, ja?
Yeah. And so
That's dirty
Tanzen,
dancing.
That's dirty dancing.
Yeah.
And so, but absolutely, it does take more. It takes a little bit more time, I guess, with the women for sure. You learn that the women don't love being singled out quite as much. That like a one-on-one competitions in the weight room. So if we're talking about bench pressing and trying to get the most out of my athletes, I can get more kilos out of my athlete squat if my female athlete squat, if I pair them together and say, hey, it's the team total that is going to matter today, that they don't want to let each other down. But singly, they're not quite as big, and they don't even want to be lauded as the best. And it's understanding that, and it's also I think the way that I do warm up and the fact that I am the front face of it, like I am the guy, if I'm making them dance, I am in the front row.
Yeah, you're leading the running man, right?
That I am leading the running.
You have the chops.
I look the work. I'm not a good dancer, you guys. I mean, I'm a fearless dancer, but I'm not a great dancer. This is when somebody should interrupt me and tell me I'm lost.
No, you're a great dancer. You're actually amazing.
Agility.
Ooh, that wasn't easy. So,
No one puts baby in the corner.
but what it is I gotta get started. What it is vulnerability. Is that I am not afraid to look stupid. I'm a crier. Like if I don't even know how many times a season during, if the coach gets everybody together at the end of practice and he wants to say what a great job we did, and I am like, okay, I have to mention that this one athlete won the competition. She's never won a jumping competition today, and I have to say it. She's been working so hard, and I'll say it. My voice will crack every time. I'll start welling up. The girls will get uncomfortable because I'm a total softie on stuff like that, and I think that vulnerability, trying to speak the language, like all of those things matter. That you're showing that you're not afraid to open yourself. And so like, I think that helps bond me to any team, but especially a women's team.
Love it.
And, I love that actually the last two teams I've been on, not Team China, but the Dutch and the Germans are some of the only teams in women's volleyball where the coaches and athletes eat together. Usually there's a coach's table and then all the athletes.
Oh, what a mistake.
Yeah. And we're all together on these last two teams. That's a big part of it. I feel like I got closer faster with those athletes because you're at lunch talking about
Right, whatever
the
they're
real
doing on
world.
the weekend or
Real
whatever's going
world.
on. Yeah,
Yep.
what's going on in their
why
lives.
why can't I
that
stop
training
trying,
table
whatever.
piece is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
You've just launched the No Zombies library. Tell us about that and what your intention is with this, because I think, it's like do one, see one, do one, teach one. That old medical model.
Right.
But people do need. I'm always like, you have the principles here. Why don't you just invent the thing? And Juliet's like, you need cake recipes. People need a cake recipe
Right.
before they
Maybe
start.
everyone doesn't feel as creative or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So tell us what your intention is and how it's going. Tell us what it is first.
Oh, yeah. So it is a video library of currently 400 some different warm-up ideas. And I was waiting for a while because, it's been in an Excel spreadsheet. I have one huge gnarly sheet of tennis ball warm-up ideas grouped by ones that I can do as individuals, in teams of 2, and as the group. And that's how if I am on the road where I always travel with a sack of tennis balls, I'm like, okay,
So say we all.
Yeah, as we should. And whereas I'm like, okay, tomorrow would be a good day to do tennis ball warm up. I'll just say, okay, I'll decide whether or not I want them in there. And then I choose from the list and I write my little menu of choices of what we'll do that day. Well, I realize that that's not actually a very accessible thing for people to use because, of course, people have asked me when I give presentations or I'm on a podcast and they'll say, send me that list, Rhett. Send me that Excel spreadsheet. But are they going to know what booty bumper bash is? Do I want to spend time writing out what booty bumper bash is and what the rules are? And no, I don't want to do that at all. So I needed to find the right format to put it in. And I found this wonderful Netflix style format to put it in that it can be easily sorted by, okay, I have long sticks and I want to put them in groups of 2 and I need strength-based stuff and I need abdominal stuff that I
Can
can
you
do with the
filter
long
by
stick.
pool noodle? Because I was really curious about
You can
that.
filter by pool noodle. That might be a miscellaneous.
Do you
equipment.
remember the Mashunga swords that we had at the gym?
Yeah.
So the problem with this
Yeah.
Mashunga sword is that it's a foam sword with a PVC handle.
Yes.
But they're like $40 a pair. But you can actually hit pretty hard. And our rule was no strikes to the head and glancing blows don't count. You have to have a straight. And you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
hit me as hard as you want, and it makes a really loud like thwack. And it's satisfying.
Yeah,
And
it's-
those are
those
some
are
of our
really
most
fun.
vicious warm-ups where people are like, I don't know if I have it in me today to fight with the swords. I'm like, hey, we're going to bench press later. So
it wasn't like, financially viable in a commercial gym space to keep those things alive. But while we had them, it was really fun.
You don't know, but you've planted this idea in my head. And like I should say spend, not waste. I spend money on ideas like this very freely, way too freely, that I can talk myself. And to use it in warm up, I really need 8 of something minimum,
I
but
know.
probably 16. I have gone big. I go big. When I really like something, I go big. That's why I have 8 aqua bags. I have 8 RMT clubs filled with sand. I got 16. And I have a big library of this stuff. But to answer your question, like it's gone from being in a big spreadsheet to now in this one kind of library because a lot of coaches are very excited to do this.
and where we find it? What's it called?
Oh, great question. And no, you can find it through my Instagram page, No Zombies. I think it's No Zombies by Rhett. Yes, I should have. Boy, that would have been nice to prep beforehand. Yeah.
You're like, no zombies.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, can we put something in show notes? All right. Well,
We will. We'll add all this links in the show notes. No worries. Of course.
And so a lot of people just struggle with the creativity, and I want to take that piece out of their heads. If you have a sack of tennis balls, in one click, there's going to be dozens and dozens of different movement puzzles and challenges and partner drills you can do with those tennis balls that can be just the one thing you add to your existing warm-up to make it more interesting. Like really, that's all it takes. Set get some sticks at Home Depot, line them up at the end of your normal area for warming up, and occasionally roll over to them and get some of the fun stick challenges that will have your athletes smiling, swinging swords, all kinds of stuff.
Love it.
Awesome. We will, of course, link all that in the show notes so people can find your amazing
When
No
does the
Zombie Warmth
season
Library.
kick off? Official.
Yeah, what are you up to?
International
What's
season.
next?
So I head back to Germany.
Where? Woher?
Yep, it is in Kienbaum. It's in east of Berlin. And we'll start up at the end of April. And then we have a big series of tournaments that will take us to Brazil and Turkey and back to USA. We're going to be in Texas again for that tournament. And then we get a little break and then we gear up for World Championships. And that's going to be in Thailand.
Amazing. That
Do you,
sounds so
do you
fun.
need someone to carry your tennis?
Yeah. Do you need someone to carry your
I
pool
can
noodles?
lift
Because that sounds
a
great.
lot of tennis.
I can take a
balls.
lot more of my favorite equipment if you guys will be hauling for me.
Yeah, well, Rhett, I mean, this has been a complete pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here and be with us in person. And I really think this is going to be so valuable for so many coaches. And it's so rad that you've created this resource because I think my guess is there's going to be so many coaches who are bought into the concept, but are like, I can't think of the things to do and just need that resource. So it's amazing that you've
Yeah, and I also want to say to those coaches, those head coaches out there, you're a head coach, you're a CEO. It doesn't have to also be your responsibility to do this. But you can say, I need you, my assistant, to go work this out, right? You can't be an expert in all domains, but recognizing that you might be able to get a little bit more out of your
or even
athletes.
in youth athletes, you could have, your team captain or your older players or whatever. They can start to take over some of this.
Love it.
right?
Yeah, now it's my turn to say amen.
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 So
Thank you
say
for
we
being
all.
here.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks,
having me.